I'm Mike. I'm the lead generation specialist here at Kinsta. And, I'm a traditional marketer. Like, I love everything about marketing. Obviously, my role here is lead generation. So growing the business, getting new clients for Kinsta is in my DNA. It's what I do every day. Little fun facts about me. I spent 6 years in the US Army. So this really is kind of a second career for me. Um, I also live in Louisa, Virginia. So most of you probably have no idea where that is. It's really out here in the middle of nowhere, Virginia, right now. And in my free time, I love to do anything outdoors. Like I camp, hike, and that really is just me in a nutshell. But this webinar really isn't about me. I want to introduce our guest, Raffi Pindari he's the founder of Studio 98, a phenomenal agency that has clients as large as Time Warner Cable. And I'll let him introduce himself since he's here.
Hey guys, glad to have you on here, and I'm really happy that Kinsta is actually putting this together because I think that this is, as a company, I believe that Kinsta is bringing a lot of value outside of just their core service by doing these webinars. So I actually checked out some of the earlier ones, so I'm really happy you guys are doing that, and I'm happy to be here with you. Yeah, I guess this pretty much sums me up. I think I forgot to put on there the triathlon, training for an Ironman. I started this small company myself, while having a full-time job, and have built it up to, several companies now. So, I'm excited to be here with you and training for my Ironman with everything else going on. And
Right.
I like to pick crazy things and go, hey, why not do that? So that's pretty much sums me up.
That's awesome. You like to keep it exciting. I
Yeah.
was reading through your bio and was like, oh man, this guy lives such an exciting life. My life is very mundane by comparison. But yeah, let's kind of build right off of that. I want to know, before we kind of get to like the origin of Studio 98, why don't you tell us a little bit about how you got started in web design and development?
Yep. Yeah, actually, it's an interesting point. So I had actually started a clothing company. That was actually what I started with, and I had this idea to make t-shirts with cool designs on them, and I was doing that. And when it came to actually getting a website made, I was trying to find somebody to help me do it. And at that time, it was 13 years ago. It's a little while now. I was trying to get somebody to do it, and it was so expensive for me. And I thought, okay, I need to get some way of doing a shopping cart. This was before Shopify. This was before all of that. And I thought, okay, how do I do this? And so I actually had figured out how to. I just taught myself how to build websites, and I built my first site. And I thought, I could probably help other people with this, and this is much easier than the whole clothing thing for me.
Right.
I thought, let's start talking to some other people and start getting some clients. So that was kind of the origins of that. And for me, it led into noticing that at the time you had websites that either looked really good and were awful in SEO, or they looked horrible but they were great for SEO. And we kind of wanted to bring those two together. And again, there's so many tools and providers and support that's available to people today, especially if they have a handful of clients. And there's just so many things that are available to you today that we didn't have then. But, that was kind of the approach that we wanted to take, and we built from that.
Very, very, very cool. And so you started out, I guess, in taking on some freelance clients, building up that business, and then what sort of kind of put you in the mindset of like you wanted to expand this and build an agency?
Sure. Yeah. So when I first started it, you start with one, right?
Yeah.
Like you're not going to get to 100 without getting one first. I mean, I'm a pretty simple guy. That's how the math adds up on it, right? So I went and actually found the easiest way for me to get the first handful of clients was through personal connection, right? Like either somebody I knew or somebody I knew who knew somebody.
Yep.
And so I talked to my dad, I talked to other people and said, okay, who do you know? Right. And my dad, he's, awesome. He just wanted me to build him a site for free. So, I did that, but he connected me up with a couple other people and I was like, all right, fine. I'll do it for you. Right. I don't know. You've done something for me in my life before, so I'll do this for you. And, so I did that just through personal connection, and it was, and as I did that, I actually, got, okay, a client here and a client there and a client here and a client there. And I did some things right. I did a lot of things wrong though, along the way. Like I learned a lot of lessons and I'm not the guy who's like sits here and says, hey, I did everything perfectly. I learned from those lessons and actually evolved and changed in order to kind of build up to being an agency now where we have, thousands of clients on service. So
that's really, really awesome. It's awesome. And I think one of the things, because I have luckily a lot of friends that are freelancers, and I think one of the things I often find that they struggle with is processes. And I know a big part of running an agency, you have to set up, like scalable processes, like figuring out what's the workflow. You have to be in touch with a large volume of clients. And how does that go from like, you're just like doing the thing you enjoy as a freelancer, just building sites kind of as people come to you, to saying like, now we're a proper agency. I have to build things so that other people can jump in anywhere and kind of help keep this process going.
Sure. So there's this is going to be interesting, I think, because I don't think you would think that this has anything to do with what you just asked, but it is so relevant. Okay. The transition from doing it yourself, everything, to the agency. So from a freelance perspective to an actual agency, really, if there's one word that kind of summarized it for me, it's the word confront. Okay. And confront, that doesn't mean like battle confront. That means like to face something. That means you just face it and you're not flinching, doing something else, running away. You face it. And the reason why I say that is because when you're talking about process, you're talking about confront. When you're talking about training, being able to train anybody else to do anything, there's a basis that you had to actually have confronted it first to be able to do that. So the reason I mention that is because the first thing that I had started with is you'll notice when you're looking at an organization, even if you're just a freelancer, that is an organization. It's just a one-man organization or a couple-man organization. What you do is you actually can look at what are the different types of things that are actually occurring here. Like, for example, if I'm reaching out, like I called my dad, right? And I said, hey, who do you know that I could talk to about doing this? Can you make an introduction for me? That is one type of thing that has to happen. Even if you're going to continue doing that same type of action, that is a type of action you will do. Building a website is a different type of action.
For sure. So
when you start looking at these things, you start to confront and actually see what is actually happening. Because it's not just, even though sometimes it can feel like a chaotic mess of, essentially the equivalent of like mashed potatoes of an organ, like it's just everything is all together. When you actually step back, you can start to divide these things up into different types of particles, different types of things. And when you do that, it makes it easier to transition things off. Now, the reason I mentioned the word confront, and this is a little bit of a longer answer, but I think this is really important.
Yeah, for sure.
Because the thing that we know the best, like if you've been freelancing for a little while or you've built, kind of a smaller agency going, the thing you know best is your product.
Yep.
Like the thing you know best is how to build a website or how to do SEO or how to do these things. That's what you know best.
Yep. Nice.
The tricky part is people will usually, because they know that best, that's their comfort zone.
Yeah.
So they don't want to confront the other parts, which are how do you create a steady flow of business coming in. So they stick to the part they know. And essentially what happens is if you were going to measure your sales, let's say on a graph, right? You're going to put it on a graph, it would look like this. And what happens is it's basically sink or swim, sell or die is essentially what's happening. If you're going to put it on a graph, you'd be like sell, 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 deliver, 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 sell, 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 deliver, deliver. That's what it looks like.
Yeah.
So long story short, one of the beginning separation points that I worked on was separating out, once I knew what it was I was delivering, getting somebody else to start doing the delivery. and I focused on selling because I knew my product so well. But if you non-confront, if you take the approach of I'm not going to face the sales process, what you're going to do is go try to hire a salesperson, and you don't know how to generate sales on an ongoing basis, and that person's going to fail 9 times out of 10.
Gotcha.
So that's the first separation that I did, is selling and delivering, because then you have somebody all the time working on generating new business for the company. Even if it's a partner, you can separate the hats out that way.
Yeah. No, that's really, really good. I wouldn't have thought about coming at it that way. And that kind of segues into kind of our next section. So you said, you don't want to go out and hire a sales guy. So with Studio 98, what were the first couple of hires that you made, and why those specific hires?
Sure. Yeah. So when I was looking at this, I realized that the thing that I knew after having a handful of sites under my belt is I knew how to do sites. Yeah. It's also it was my comfort zone.
Yep.
If I'm going to make the transition, though, I'm going to have to separate that sales and that delivery. I mean, that is what I have to do, because otherwise what happens is you get somebody who's interested, who reaches out to you, but you're so busy delivering. Because like what happens if you're going to market on a graph, it would look like this. You sell, deliver, sell, deliver. That's what's happening, right? Yeah. And because you can't, you're going to focus on one at a time. I love the concept of multitasking. It just doesn't work very well in practicality, because like trying to do 2 things at the exact same moment doesn't actually work. Like you'd have to have two brains. Like there's 2 people, it just doesn't work. So so what happens is you sell, deliver, sell, deliver. And what during that process, the unfortunate part is right now as a freelancer, if you're experiencing this, like, and I'm just saying to everybody who's on here too, you are losing business to other companies that you have the opportunity to sell if you had somebody focused on selling and separate person focusing on delivery. And the reason being is because when somebody comes back to you and asks you for work and you don't get back to them right away, how many times have you then reached back out when you finally had time for a breather and you realized, oh man, I got to go sell more stuff in order to pay rent. And now you reach back out to them and they say, oh no, I have it covered. Which means now you just gave away a customer to somebody else. And all that happened was you gave away a customer to somebody else who isn't doing sales and delivery. They separated that function out. So that was a key transition. And so what I had to do was decide I'm going to focus on taking the sales part because it's the least worked out part of this whole thing. I know the product. That was the beginning of that.
Gotcha. And do you think it's important for the person who is the web agency owner, like this is your venture, to be that key salesperson all the time? Because, obviously the big point is like, the product, like, web design, web development code. So is it like you as a web agent, that expertise is the really important part of selling?
So I think it's 2 things. One is because, again, when people start, like a guy who's a carpenter, let's just take a totally different industry. A guy who's a carpenter, he works for a carpentry business. He says, I can do this better. I'm going to go start my own carpentry business. So he leaves the carpentry business where he is a carpenter doing the work and then goes to become a carpentry business. What he doesn't realize is when you're a carpentry business, you are now the salesman, you're the PR guy, you're the delivery guy, you're the finance person, you're the quality control, you're the everything, right? Yeah. So it's just a different hat. Yeah. Okay. And so the reason I think it's important to, when you make that transition, to focus on the sales is because that is typically the part then that when people, if you're doing both, typically the vast majority of people I have seen know the product super well. And because of that, it's easier to get somebody to do those actions because you know what the actions are. Because you're saying, do these actions. And if somebody does it, right away. And if they say, for example, let's say you're building a website and it takes you a week to build a website. And somebody comes in and says, it'll take me 5 weeks. You go, no. You already know that's not what it's going to take, because you know it. You know that process. And you can turn over the thing that you know. But if a sales guy comes along and says, hey, it's going to take me 6 months to build out a basic sales process, you have no idea unless you've built a sales process before. So that's the reason I say take the thing you know and turn that over to somebody, because then you can see if they're doing it right. That's one aspect.
Okay.
And then the second piece of that is now there's a bunch of stuff you can work out on the sales line and figure out and all of that. And you're the one controlling what's coming in. So you can make sure that somebody who wants something totally crazy, you know, like sometimes you get the client who wants a Frankenstein project. They're like, I want this and that and this and that. And you think this is an awful idea.
Yeah.
Okay. You can decide whether you want to take on that business or not. And what you should do is then look at the person who's doing the delivery and go, can this person handle it? Or can we as an organization handle it or not? And don't just take everything that comes your way, basically.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So yeah, I know a lot of people, I think a lot of people when they start out in agency, they do feel like if business comes my way, like I need to take it, like I need to build a portfolio. And, you know, people get discouraged because I think you do get caught up with like a really demanding client that has a bad idea and they want to go on and the project's never finished. How do you suss out, especially in the beginning, what is like, oh, I should take this to build my portfolio, or this is a bad situation, like I just need to say no?
Yeah, I think some of that is a learning experience. I mean, I took on my fair share of bad clients. I took on my fair share of bad clients that I said, I know this is a bad client. I'm going to do it anyways. And then I experienced the results of that decision, right? So that's not even like a fault on anybody. I think some of that is a learning experience. The thing that I will say though is, you know, like as an example, we had a handful of clients. I had gotten it to a point where I had a couple staff, and I had a client who was very demanding. And she was not, it's not even that a demanding client is a problem. It's when it just kind of sucks to work with them. You know, you're like, oh, I just feel beat up when I work with them, you know, and it's not because they need or want a lot. Usually what that is that they're asking for things that are outside of scope a lot. They're unwilling to stick to agreements. You know, they want everything done right this second, which is understandable. We live in a world kind of like that everything needs to be done now. But it doesn't have to be a client that makes you feel bad about doing your job every day. And so I had a client who was about 25% of our business. And she was tough, right? She was tough. And even when I had a really capable project manager that did great on other projects, and I put her with him, I'm not exaggerating. The next day I get a long email. And she CC'd them saying, this has been awful. They're not responding on things, blah, 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 blah. This is why you, Rafi, you need to be the one to do it.
Right.
And what I did, I mean, honestly, at that point, she sent me this thing and it was unnecessary. I already knew what was happening in the project and our guy did not mess up.
Right.
So I literally went like this, boop, and hit the delete button. The next day, she sends another email, okay? And she says, oh, now that you got involved, things are so much better.
Okay.
Yeah. I didn't even say anything to the person who was doing. All I did is actually I called the person who were doing it and I said, you're doing a great job, keep going. And and all I did was hit delete on the email. So her point was it wasn't actually reasonable. It wasn't based on any actual data. It was based on, she was just trying to create problems. So when what I ended up doing was basically hustling to get a handful of additional clients to replace at least a portion of the income. And when I cut her, I actually looked at it. She was responsible for about 25% of our income, but about 40% of our work.
Wow. Okay.
So you find those guys are actually tend to be disproportionately, they eat up your time and honestly make you not want to do it. Though it's not worth it.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I'm kind of actually interested in that point. So when you get to a point with a difficult client and you do have to make the decision to cut and let them go, what does that look like? Like, how do you let people down easy? Because I'm assuming you don't want to burn bridges. Like, maybe it's a situation where, they want to come back later on, but they really appreciate you once they go somewhere else and realize like they actually were doing a phenomenal job. So how do you kind of let clients go?
Sure. There was actually a moment where I realized, and I was looking at something in my company, but I actually looked at something in other companies too, which was this point of when a person is late in a business, the company is like, you were late, you get reprimanded, you get whatever, right? The guy's late by 5 minutes. Yet they let a client just do whatever they want. They splash their nastiness all over this guy. And I'm not saying the vast majority of our clients, the vast majority, and honestly, I think the vast majority of people out there are amazing. I think if you do a good job communicating with them, if you do a good job setting expectations and holding it to it, you'll avoid the vast majority of problems, because the vast majority of people aren't bad and wrong and awful clients or whatever. So having said that, if you let a customer who is just kind of nasty, negative, whatever, like spew stuff all over your staff, and then your staff, if they're late for 1 second, you're like, okay, you're wrong and reprimanded, or they mess up on one thing, you're wrong and reprimanded. It's kind of they're kind of at like a bad spot, you know, because so I actually was looking at this and I realized there actually has to be a balance there, which is I'm looking for clients that are going to fit with my values. Like there are clients we just don't take on because of their product. And it's just a firm line in the sand. If it goes against whatever your values are, whatever is important to you, it's not worth it. Because you're doing marketing in any capacity. You're doing freelance that has anything to do with what we're talking about today. You're probably involved in websites, marketing. What you're involved in is helping these guys generate more sales. So it should fit within your values. The other part is what they're looking for. If it fits within what you can do, great. And if it doesn't, either find another company who has the experience doing it that you can kind of like partner with, right? Like there have been times from time to time and you know, over the years, we've taken on more and more as we've gotten bigger. But there are times where we've done, you know, like a joint project with other companies who had the experience developing out bigger projects or more software type things. And we were able to get money from it, but I didn't have the headache of having to be the only one involved in something we didn't know. So sticking with our values, sticking with things that we know and our service was super important. And it allowed us to just get more clients like that. And the more clients that just fit within what we were going for as a business, the easier it was to scale.
Nice.
So that was kind of what we were looking for.
Very, very cool. Very cool. And so I think values is a really good point. And I think that's a big differentiator I see with a lot of people running freelance versus people running agency. Like most agencies at least have some sort of stated values. And I think everyone has values. Like you intrinsically have your own values, but when it comes to like writing those down and figuring those out, I think it's something that a lot of people starting the agency need help with. So could you walk through kind of like your Studio 98's values and how you came to those?
Yeah, sure. And then one thing I actually wanted to mention, the reason I had brought up the customers spewing on staff and all of that was because the way that I let them down is actually relatively simple. It needs to be a perfect fit. Yeah. Like if that client is a perfect fit for us and we're a perfect fit for them, great, then it's awesome. And if it's not, the conversation is, hey, this isn't a perfect fit. And the reason I say that is because there are times where it started to build up and our staff are trying to do a good job for somebody, but they're unwilling to take it. Like we had somebody who had written to us and they said, you know, this was awful. And they had given us the sign off on a website, but a year later, 1 year later, we get this random like review or thing that pops up that says it was awful. The experience was awful. It wasn't even written by the person we did the project with. It was written by a different person in their company. And I'm like, so, and you know what the resolution she wanted was? Another year of free service.
Oh, okay.
So if we're the worst in the world, why do you want to keep doing service? Which was our conclusion on the thing. If we are so bad, I mean, literally, we just responded saying, if our service is so bad, why are you asking for an additional year of service?
Right.
I'm just saying that, right? So usually the demands at that point when it builds up will be cumbersome enough or you know, problematic enough that it's just not a perfect fit. And if it's not, it's not, right? Because usually they're asking for things that are unreasonable.
For sure.
So anyways, that kind of completes that piece. I just realized that was the reason I brought that up.
No, that's great. That's great.
Yeah. And then in terms of values, it's to me, it was, you know, I think that a business is a reflection of you as a person, right? So when you're the owner and you run it, it's a reflection of you. So different people have different religious beliefs. Different people have different just philosophical views, different moral codes, different upbringings, anything. People are different, which is awesome, right?
Yeah.
The business values, I think, should actually be a real representation of that. So like in our case, what we want to do is help businesses succeed. We actually want to generate more sales and profit for companies. So when we say it, even internally, we talk about it. What we're doing is working on building, we want to help grow sales and profit for our customers through marketing, software, and consulting. That's what we do. Gotcha. And because that's what the sales effort was, the part we kind of wanted to target in on. And then in terms of types of companies, there's just some areas of life, I don't want to do something for, prostitution. Just it's against my thing. Right. And we have guys who are, doing things for a lot of different industries, and they write to us, and it just doesn't fit within our, what I want to do business with. And so we just say, no, thanks,
Yeah. I know. I'm sure that's really good for a lot of people on this call to hear, because I think it really reinforces and puts them out of that mindset of like, I just have to take anything that comes my way. And you really want to start, I think it's probably even more important early on to really start branding who your agency is, and, really focusing on who you really want to bring in, who you're going to work with, because otherwise you're going to end up with an agency with a bunch of clients that don't align with your values. You're going to hate your agency, which is going to end up being like a frustrating situation.
Yep.
It's
a lot harder to pull that apart later. You're right. Actually, it's a lot harder to pull that apart later. So like, if you're wanting to make that transition from freelance to agency, get that nailed down now and stick to it. And I'll just tell you, it has never been worth it to violate that. Like, and I had things that seemed like they could be the best opportunity in the world that violated my fundamental, like I said, I've done a lot of things the wrong way. I did that. I did the ignore my values and then go down the path. And I was like, oh, this is just miserable. And then I spend a year pulling that whole thing apart and cleaning it up and getting rid of that and it's just so much easier to do it at the beginning.
Yeah. Nice. And then I'd love to jump into the meat of what I think a lot of people want to get out of this is when you're talking to clients and you're bringing on new business, like what are they looking for, and what are those things that make them choose Studio 98 over, any other agency that they may be talking with?
And what was the first part? I just missed the first part of your question.
Just like what are clients looking for, like when they're choosing an agency these days?
Yeah, sure. It's interesting. So one is when you can sell something or say deliver your services or present your services with certainty, that goes a long way, right? So part of that certainty is the fact that you actually have it worked out. Okay. When we first started, after a few years in business, I still didn't have a structured sales approach in place. Okay. I didn't have a price list guideline because everything was custom. So it was like, well, it's based on what their budget is and this and that. And so basically it was the equivalent of, I need to pull out a crystal ball.
Yeah.
And kind of hopefully get it right on the project. Yeah. And it was actually one of the other execs at the time who really pushed me hard, who's now actually my partner in the company, who pushed me hard on this point of, we get it structured so that it's easier to train salespeople. It's easier to relay that to customers. And it's easier to say, here's the deliverable you're going to get and make it really clear. Because realize we're dealing in a field where people have no clue what they're doing. In a lot of cases, the clients have no idea. They started their furniture store because they want to run a furniture store, not a web company. They run their dental office because they want to run a dental office, not a web company. And so we're being hired based on our expertise. And what that means is we need to bring our expertise to the table. So the speed with which you can sell and the speed with which you can deliver is super important. Because if you can actually deliver it and show them a good result quickly is awesome. And the other part is if you can direct what you're doing in a way that helps them solve really the problems they're faced with, they'll pay you for it. People
Yeah.
want to pay to help solve a problem. They don't care whether your SEO plan is the best SEO plan or not, as
Right.
if it doesn't help them solve their problem. So,
Yeah.
whatever, having that where you can say with certainty, here's what we're doing, and it's very clear, I think is really important. It also makes it faster, right? So, because they're going to go and get quotes from other people, and they're going to go and talk with other guys. And if you take 2 weeks to get back to them, they're likely going to have bought from somebody else.
Gotcha. Yeah, I know. That's really key because you always assume like they're talking to you, talking to other people, so you want to be quick and on top of it. And actually, I think segues nicely into our topic of pricing. So you've seen agencies roll out a variety of pricing models. So you have people that custom quote everyone. You have people that have like a set hourly. People who have defined scope for a flat fee. What pricing do you use, and what do you recommend?
Sure. Yeah, we focus on a project-based pricing, and the reason why is that gives us it makes it super clear for our client upfront what they're getting into, right? As long as my expectations are set well with them, so I can
Yeah.
say, here is what you're going to get.
Okay.
Then the set pricing is beautiful because it incentivizes us to do a great job so that we get them on to further service and get them to start and they can actually roll on the project and have something they're happy with at the end. We have tended to focus on a project-based pricing, even if it's, hey, we have this add-on and this add-on. On the support side of things, we kind of have a foundation, and I would tell you, connecting up with the other piece that I think is just really important, and this is relevant to this, is connecting up with other businesses that specialize in parts. And I'll tell you, I was the guy who tried to do everything myself. And seriously, we had the Linux box in the middle of a data center somewhere and control everything. And what was interesting, we weren't utilizing other people for their expertise. And so like we've done work for other agencies who mark up our work. I mean, we do it all the time. We work for other agencies that mark up stuff, but I'll tell you, this is why I work with like Kinsta, for example. This is why we actually utilize you guys, because you guys specialize in a piece of this that I don't have to have guys 24/7 monitoring sites. And like, we had some little hiccup on one site. We have, whatever we have one client, just as an example, with you guys, as 120 websites. There was one hiccup with one site. And these are guys, by the way, that 120 sites used to go down before, in an earlier version of infrastructure, before we got involved. Their sites would go down every 3 days, all of them.
Wow.
All of them. 120 brands. This company owns 120 different brands. All of them would go down every 3 days, like clockwork, pretty much. So we reprogrammed things. We got them on one infrastructure. It was okay, but it wasn't really right. And when we actually moved them to you guys, it has been awesome. We had one hiccup on one thing that actually had nothing to do with your side of it. It was something else on one of the sites. It was one site. Not everybody had a problem. And, I was not woken up in the middle of the night dealing with 120 sites being down because it wasn't 120 sites. It was one, and it wasn't even a hosting issue, right? So we lean on other people for the parts that they really specialize in. And that's why we actually went with you guys. And no, this isn't a paid promotion. I wasn't told to say this by Kinsta. I'm just telling you guys, that was actually that's my honest feedback on why and what happened.
Yeah. I do think kind of outsourcing things that aren't like core to your business is really key. And I think, building those relationships is important because like you said, you're, sourcing things out to other people. They're also going to do the same thing in return, right? They're going to, things that they don't specialize in, they're going to think of you. You sent them business, they're going to send you business, and you create kind of like your own ecosystem. And then, you kind of build that trust, and it helps you feel like you don't have to kind of do that on your own. And so I want to ask a little bit about I know freelancers, one of their struggle is they are caught in this place where you're competing. They feel like they're competing with people who are on Fiverr, who are like, oh, I'll design your website for $50 or some crazy low amount. And how do you go about standing by your value as a freelancer or as an agency? And how do you kind of communicate that?
Sure. I think there are different, honestly, there are people today who are going to use those services from now till the end of time. Now that they have them, there are companies that if I talk to and I say, hey, we're going to charge this, they're going to go, yeah, but you know what? I can get it done on Fiverr. I can get a logo done by 99 Designs. I can do this. I can do that. And I go, okay, well then good, then do that.
Yeah.
I'm not going to compete with that. And I also say, look, you could also do this for free. Why?
Yeah.
Let's take it a step further. Why use 99 Designs? Why don't you get out Illustrator and build your own logo, right?
Right.
Take away from your practice, take away from your construction company, and you go design your own logo by yourself. Why would you even use 99 Designs? That's $99. You could spend, instead save $99, spend the next 4 weeks making a logo, teaching yourself how to use Illustrator. So there are people today who are going to go and do those things anyways. And the misconception, I believe, is that because their brother's roommate's, ex-best friend's dog's pet knows about SEO, that I've heard a couple things about SEO. So, I can just do that. Or, I know a guy who can do that. That just because of that, we're never going to compete with that. If we try to compete on price alone, we're going to basically compete to zero, because eventually somebody's willing to do it for free.
Yeah, I know.
So we basically position ourselves, in the way that what we want to do is great work. We want to do our one-time projects, but the other mistake I made is the first number of years, I didn't have any recurring service. And one that we have done that is actually right in alignment with you guys, like that with the one client I talked about, we have 120 sites on Kinsta for one of our customers. Yeah. We do support for them on top of your hosting. So what we did is we packaged in a support service that's an ongoing service where we include, an hour of support, and the hosting we include in it. And we do the support of it. We take care of the tweaks and changes that they need, but it's built on your hosting. And so when we did projects, the exciting part is about a project is you get $3,000. Woo, that's great. Right. But then you never build the recurring. So next month you have to do it again. Otherwise, death. Yeah. Right. So you're like, okay, so I have to solve it, like my business is gone otherwise. So and I literally kicked him out. Like I was at the point I was like, no, I don't want anything. We didn't even do support. We didn't do anything going. So when you build that relationship, selling them another service that's an ongoing service where you can really help them, even if it's not a huge amount of money, it builds over time, and you keep the customer. It gives you an opportunity to sell them further as well.
Yeah. I think that's huge. Like, I think that's why you have to kind of really build in some sort of recurring thing, whether it's that SEO, whether it's maintenance, whether it's some ongoing marketing. Because I think even more valuable than the recurring revenue is having that constant relationship with that customer. Because if you're just a one-off, agency, you'll build a site for them, like, in a year or two, like, they'll forget that you even built the site. So they're not going to recommend
that happens
about you. Yeah.
You're totally right about that, man.
Yeah.
Totally right.
I think that's something you have to really be careful about. And then I'm curious, because I know a lot of people want to know about business development. So I know early on, it was very much your personal network, reaching out to people. Is that still your focus now? Do you invest in more like marketing, or what's your kind of business development mix now?
Sure. What we do is we work on every way, and we constantly test new things. Seriously, we work on every way that we can to generate business. So in the beginning, personal connections, right? If you do a good job for those people, asking for referrals and incentivizing referrals and things like that is very smart, because you can actually build. If you did just that alone, you could actually build a good business over time. Yeah. Just that, even if you just started with that. Now, when you add in one other aspect of things that helps, and this is for businesses broadly, is building a mailing list where you're actually sending out regular emails. And sometimes I've heard guys say email's dead. I'm like, no, email's not dead. We literally make millions of dollars a year on email.
Yeah.
So you building an email newsletter where you can send out helpful information, and you're doing that, and you're being in front of them, because what happens is over time you continue building that, people write back to you and go, oh, you know what? I was actually thinking about a new website, or I was thinking about, I need help with something. And so you can actually, it's not what you see on TV, right?
Yeah.
Like on TV, you have the apparency that everything's like Facebook. You basically go from nothing to a $100 billion company overnight, and that's what happened. And you don't realize it was a million decisions along the way that led you to building a big company, you know? And so, and it's not as sexy as it's made to seem, where it's just like, yeah, you're just going to sign up for a $500 plan. I mean, we say it to our clients all the time, and I'm sure everybody on this call has experienced it. Somebody says, I'm paying you $1,000 or $500 or $10,000 or whatever it is for SEO or this or that. And then they're not becoming Best Buy or Amazon or whatever. And you go, well, yeah, it's because it's $500. It's, you know, that's the thing. It's the same thing for us in our businesses. You know, it's the kind of thing that if we don't put the appropriate work into it, it's not going to build and grow. So what we've done is use the personal connections. The next part you can really do is, if you start to zero in on certain types of customers, like certain people are really the kinds of customers you really like working for, like maybe it's by industry, maybe it's a size of company, maybe it's people who look for certain types of services, you can find out from those people what other services they are buying from companies. Meaning there are other companies already servicing those same customers. What you can do then is go to those companies and do either a joint promotion, a joint marketing, whatever. And what you're utilizing is their connection with other companies parallel to yours. And yes, you can do things like Google Ads and other advertising things as well. I'm even talking about the stuff that you can just run yourself, that in doing it that way, you build the relationship. So, you know, that was really what and then just building up your, you know, email newsletter and the outreach and everything that you're doing on a regular basis.
Yeah. Yeah. I 100% agree. Like what I do with Kinsta in terms of lead generation, like email is huge. You know, it's by far the best return on investment. And like you said, like I've seen the same thing happen. Like even like standard automated marketing emails, people will actually respond to. So it'll be some auto respond email from downloading an ebook, and people will respond to a marketing email and say, hey, I really love this ebook. This is great content. You know, how do I find out more about this or that? And I think emails, you're going to see it come back into style. I think you're already seeing like the newsletter kind of really come back around. Like, I don't know if you check out like, well, it used to be Market Snacks, Robinhood Snacks now has like phenomenal newsletter. And I think it's coming back into style. So I think email is like such a huge investment.
Yeah, I think just being creative about how you can communicate with your customers, which by the way, also gives you an opportunity to talk about your values and what's important to you. And there are customers who are going to connect with that. There are also people who won't connect with that. Yeah. And that's okay. That gets those people to go away. And now you can just get more of what you actually want in a customer.
For sure. For sure. Yeah, that's really awesome. And then, so I want to talk a little bit about like this network of, you know, building with businesses and finding clients. Obviously you're turning away some clients that you feel like are hard, like low paying or not easy to work with. How do you zero in on like, this is going to be a great client, this client's going to be a high paying one? How do you identify them out of the mix when it can be a little hard to suss that out from the very beginning?
Yep. So part of it right at the very, very, very beginning was trial and error. You know, I started taking on some clients and I found which ones are the ones that I really liked working with or not. Yeah. And you start to look at what's common amongst the people that I liked working with, you know, and like, as an example, we found, you know, for us that there are certain positions in a company, right? Like you could automatically assume that if you're going to deal with the website, if you're building a website or you're doing marketing, that's going to be the marketing director. Maybe, maybe not. Yeah. The marketing director in certain size of companies actually have more decision-making power than others. In a lot of very big companies, they actually have a budget assigned to them and they control that. In smaller companies, they don't necessarily. So all you're dealing with is essentially a non-decision maker on it. So by utilizing that concept of, okay, so you do work for people who then introduce you, you can get introductions to other people who then get you introductions. You can spread it that way.
Yep.
You can find out what other companies are servicing those same customers and do a like non-competitive, right? And do joint venture relationships with them, and promote to them. Like as an example, we have because we have also software as a service platforms that kind of focus on certain industries, right? We launched one that was for the retail world. It was for retail stores, and it helps them sell more stuff in retail.
Gotcha.
When we sold our first handful of clients, and when I say the whole finding people who already service them, here's an example. I sold the first few ourselves, and in doing that, we figured out what's the size of store we like working for, who's the person we actually sign up in a company, all these, we learned a lot.
Yeah.
The next action we took was, let's look at those companies and who else are they buying from? Because somebody else already has a relationship with these companies. So who else are they buying from? And you have associations, like you could become a preferred partner in an association.
Yeah.
Like why not, right? That they service a lot of very similar types of companies. It's the same thing. We found, for example, with this one of our companies, that manufacturers was the way we wanted to go. So manufacturers already sell things to retail stores. So we went and got relationships with manufacturers and built a good size business servicing a lot of companies, because the manufacturers started recommending our product to their retailers. Why? Because our product helped their retailers sell more stuff, in which case they buy more stuff from the manufacturer. It can be guys like that service them. It could be, other non-competitive, companies like that. And so you'll start to find it. And those types of things are really good ways that don't cost you a ton, to do that. You have other things like, and then building your email list, those have been the most successful for us. Yes. Ads work some and all of that. But I would say, if you're going to do ads, just make sure you watch that, because just letting it go on, while spending money out the door without really managing it isn't, it's not worth it.
For sure. And I want to talk about kind of like support kind of as you're growing. So I think, some people kind of have the mindset, like, I can't talk too much to other agency owners, or they're going to steal my ideas, or if I get too close, they're going to start cozy up to my clients. Do you draw on other agency owners for support? Like, so you can kind of, see what they're going through. Are they willing to share? Or where do you just find support as an agency owner?
Yeah, that's a really good question. The vast majority of people out there now, see, when I got to a point where I was basically working 20 hours a day, right? When we were small, I got to a point I was literally working 20 hours a day and I was broke. Like, one of my designers in Chile made more money than I did, like, multiple years. That's, if you know anything about the economy in Chile, that should never happen. It's just a totally different cost of living, right?
Yes.
And we had an office, we had this small office that flooded, it literally used to flood because it would rain so hard in Florida, and mango leaves would cover the drains, and that would start to fill up with water, which would come in our office. I'd literally be on the phone with a client and turn around and see water coming into our office. I own a company that involves computers. Like, water plus computer is a bad thing, right? And so I'm sitting there literally, hey, can I call you right back? Yeah, okay, thanks. Hang up, run outside, throw in a poncho, dig mango leaves out of a drain. So I'm dealing with that kind of stuff as we're growing with a handful of staff, trying to make payroll and, all of these challenges. And it was funny. I was able to make that transition by standardizing our processes, aligning with other people in general.
Yeah.
And then I've basically done a ton of seminars for, other business owners. The reason I bring that up is there are a lot of people who won't share data. The stuff I shared with you guys today, honestly, makes you more competitive against my marketing company. Because if you actually did what you just learned here today, if you actually did that, you could be doing millions of dollars a year. I don't care about sharing the data. The truth is, I think, a lot of people put too much value in ideas that aren't executed. Ideas that were never executed what is it? It's an idea, a thought that we have millions of ideas a day.
Yeah,
So
for sure.
You know, I try to provide as much support just to other people. I do a lot of seminars for other business owners in general, and many of them are agencies and stuff like that. But I would just say, find other people that you know are successfully doing parts and pieces of what you want to be doing, even if they're not the same thing. And if you find people who aren't willing to share, because there are many agencies who are willing to share. Like if you handle, let's say you work in a local market, you could call other agencies that maybe are a little bit bigger than you in other markets, so they don't feel you're competitive, and say, hey, I want to put together a group where we can share kind of successful actions and stuff like that. That could be a way to do it. If you find other agency, other people who are doing good work that you like in a specific area. Like some companies do so good in sales, and so take their advice about sales, or they do so good in delivery, take their advice in delivery. You can also be selective about what and who. And I would honestly would say, even what you're doing here, and I looked at, the earlier webinars that were, being done and all of that, I think there's a ton of value being provided by being connected with a group like Kinsta. So, I just, that type of thing, and it's going to be individual for different people,
Yeah, I think that's huge. And while we still have a little time left, I do want to jump into the Q&A because we got some good questions here. Let me pick out one. Let's see. So can you tell towards agency transition? Here's a good one. They want to know a little bit more about your sales process. So like someone reaches out, they're initially interested, like how does that process go from like you quoting out the project to how does that kind of go through?
Yeah, so that's why I was saying, like earlier, like structuring your process as much as possible so that you can be as fast as possible. When you get somebody who's interested, having a place for that name, that identity to go, like a CRM of some sort. And honestly, it doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be something super fancy, but having a place that you actually do that and you follow up is going to help you a lot. And that's why when I started by suggesting that people separate out as much as possible the delivery and sales end, because when you are focused on the sales end of it, you can really do these kinds of things. But the faster you respond, the better chance you have of selling. Gotcha. We've literally sold projects that were $50,000 in the first call. So it was a one call close that took less than an hour the first time the company talked to us. It was a $50,000 project. Plus we managed a whole bunch of their sites for a publicly traded company.
Yeah. Wow.
So like we did that, and so, so it doesn't have to take a lot of many calls with one customer necessarily if you have a very structured sales approach. If you're like, well, let's get a little bit of data, and you don't have it worked out on your end, you're going to end up setting up a call for later, and then you forget because now you're busy on a project and all this other stuff. What will end up happening is they're going to get sold by somebody else.
Yeah.
So the more, when you get that reach, being as fast as possible on responding, I think we've addressed a lot of the aspect of how you can get opportunities with people, speaking at your chamber of commerce, doing your own webinars, your own online webinars. Pick an area of expertise that you have and continue communicating with people about that. You'll draw in business from the weirdest places. Somebody's like, oh, I saw you do something. Like I will get business indirectly from this because eyeballs were there.
Yeah. Right.
Like, right. That's not even my intention with this. Honestly, my intention with this was I'm going to help a bunch of guys who want to actually build businesses, because I think running a business and transitioning from freelance, I think being your own business owner takes guts, and transitioning over, I think, takes a lot of work. So anyways, I hope that kind of answered that.
No, I think that was good. That was a really good question. I want to squeeze one more in before we wrap up that I actually think is a good one. So one of the attendees want to know, like, when you're first starting out and you're recruiting people on your team, how do you go about selling people? Because obviously you're just a freelancer saying, I want to start an agency. It's day one of an agency. How do you get people to join in? Like, they're like, oh, here's this guy who started an agency yesterday. Why should I join him?
Yeah, there's this famous photo of Jeff Bezos. You guys could Google it, where he's like in his office by himself, and it was this trashy looking little thing with like a banner hanging on the wall.
Yeah.
that's this, you're in the same, I mean, and I'm not saying every person that I'm not Mr. Hoorah, like, every person coming along is, going to be Amazon.com. But what I am saying is you being solid on your vision and where you're going and saying, this is what you want to do. And other people buy into that. They want to be part of things where the person is convinced of what they're doing and where they're wanting to go. Like they want to be part of that. The reality is there are far more employees than employers in the world. And that's not a fault. It's not a fault. I don't consider any of my staff, I don't consider myself better than one of my staff. I just wear a different hat than them. I have this particular job and I like that hat. So anyways, that is you being solid on where you want to go and communicating that to people. And if they're not right, they don't jump on board, then guess what? They're not a perfect fit either. So I use perfect fit for staff and for customers.
Yeah. Yeah.
Somebody else had actually mentioned one other good question too. Can I bring this one up? I know I'm not the moderator guy, but I just want to mention, because he had said, and I think this is really important for people to hear. One guy was asking, how many free websites do you do when you first start? Like how long was it? And I don't know if I jumped the gun on you, but I just want to make sure we answered that one.
Good one. Yeah.
And he said, and how long was it before you began to be profitable? So we don't do free work. We don't do free work. Like we just refused. And I've had big companies, like we've had Fortune 500 companies who come along and say, well, if you do this mock-up, just give me 3 layouts for a website, 12 logos and something else. I'll take a look at it and we'll decide if we go with you. And I'm like, no. We don't do free work. We can't build a business on free work. So we don't do free websites. The only free websites I've ever done were for charities, just groups that I wanted to support, or my dad, because, he's my dad, right? So right at the beginning, but after that I made him pay. No, so you have to make a living to do it, and if not, how are you supposed to build it? So I don't do anything for free. We don't do work for free. We don't do spec work. We don't do a bunch of that. We say we do it in exchange. This allows us to do a really good job for you because we can keep our focus on this. You can't build a big business based on free. Even, some guys will point to things like, well, Dropbox is free and these other things are free. And I'm like, yeah, but that's a totally different business. Those guys have investment money. That's the only reason they can work on it. Exactly. I saw a big interview from one guy, and this messed me up actually for a little while. I saw an interview from one of these huge tech companies that built, and he said, we don't have a sales team. We grew organically. I was like, what? I got so confused. It went against everything that I've ever known, right. And I was crashing my head into the wall until I really looked at, when you look into that guy's business, he got $530 million of funding. That's why. And guess what? Today he has a sales team, very aggressive. Facebook has a sales team.
Yeah, exactly.
Facebook has a sales team. So it's a totally different model, right? So if we're going to build a business, we're going to build it based on, we do good work for somebody, they give us money, and that's how we can build a business. So I don't do anything for free.
Yeah, I know. Definitely got to stay away from that dreaded spec work, because I think, it's probably like more of an issue you have with like larger businesses, because I think a lot of very large agencies kind of have spoiled them with like, oh, we'll just spin up a free mock-ups and stuff to kind of win business. So I think as you're growing, definitely want to stay away from that, because obviously people will just drain you. They'll take your ideas, take them to someone else who will do it for cheaper. And
it happens. It happens in small businesses too. We've been asked a lot. We still get asked today, which we're just like, no thanks.
Yeah. Nice. I think we're going to kind of wrap up there. I think, this has been huge. Like by far, I think you've dumped a ton of great information on everyone who's attended. I really appreciate you taking the time, taking time away from your business to be here with us. And you've been an awesome co-host for this. One thing I want to plug before everyone starts logging off, check out kinsta.com/webinars. We're having another webinar coming up in July that's going to be on how to boost the performance of your WooCommerce site. Those of you who are running stores, it'll be a really good one. Going to go in depth with how you can, optimize your product pages, how you optimize checkout, all of those different things. So definitely check out kinsta.com/webinars to sign up for that one. And Rafferty, I want you to have your chance to sign off as well too. Say your little last parting bit.
Thank you guys so much for, being on this. I appreciate it because it's really fun for me to be able to help other people. And so, honestly, that is my only shtick. I'm just here, and I'm glad that you're connected up with Kinsta. It's a really good company, and I really like your guys' service. I really like that you're doing this for people. You don't have to do this. So the fact that you organize it and you set things up and you reach out to people and you do all of this, it takes a lot of work to do what you guys are doing. So, guys, just stay connected with these guys. They're awesome. So
Thank you.
glad to be able to help.
And and for the people that are still on right now, I am going to give you all a free gift because you are trying to grow your freelance business. We've written an ebook that is the 2020 guide to managing 40 plus WordPress sites. It's going to be a lot of good info, just like Rafferty was saying, on building out those processes. How do you manage client communication? A lot of really great tips in here. So if you guys keep an eye out, about 30 minutes or so, that email will go out and you'll have that ebook. And stay in touch with us. You can always hit up Rafferty or myself on Twitter. I'm at Mike K. Tatum. Rafferty, I believe yours is at just Rafferty Pindery. Hit us up. Yeah. I know we couldn't answer all your questions, so feel free to ping us with any questions. Feel free to message Kinsta. We're here for you guys.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Bye.